Hey everyone, welcome to the Fireside Chat number 34 on Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today we are bringing back the topic of playing games once again. If you're on the audition track, have you considered a game you would play after you win one? Or have you considered that when creating a unique career, the whole thing is made up of multiple games, and the way you play determines whether or not you'll win? Believe it or not, this is the answer behind all of your past failures. If you're not sure what a unique career looks like for you, or you've been stopped in your tracks in the past when thinking of a project or career aspiration you have as a musician, you'll have plenty to listen for in this episode. Before we start, a couple of quick things. Please join the conversation at facebook.com/crushingclassical as well as Crushing Classical on Instagram. If you love what you see, it would mean so much to us if you would comment on posts and share them with your classical musician friends and colleagues. And if you haven't done it yet, join our Facebook group Classical Cats. We continue the conversation inside the group on the topics we talk about on our episodes. You can join at facebook.com/groups/crushingclassical. Let's get started. Howdy, Eileen.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I thought I would start with a howdy instead of a hey, because I always start with hey.
You do. You always start with hey.
I know, so I'm switching it up.
Yeah.
It's about changing it.
30, what is this? What is this? 30 what?
4, I think.
After 34 firesides, you're finally changing it.
It didn't take me long.
No, not at all. Not long at all. Cool.
So we were talking about what to talk about today, and it occurred that what today's topic is a part 2 of the conversation of games that we started a few firesides back. I think it's been a few months since we put that one out, and that one was exceptionally powerful and also popular.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people listened to that and then spoke up about it in the group and messaged us and had questions about this concept. And actually, we even had someone write in and say, I did this and I won an audition because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's talk about what a game is in case you missed that episode. Because when I was introduced to games by you, Eileen, I was like, now there is an interesting concept, a different way of looking at approaching anything you want to do. It can be auditioning for an orchestra. It can be getting into a school you want. It can be creating a concert, creating a recital, creating a concert series, like just whatever you want.
It can be something it can be something in your business, your career, your life, anything.
Mm-hmm. Your life, yep. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Anything.
Yeah.
So what you do is you make a game out of it and then you play that game. And it puts a parameter around it in a way that I think it redefines it as something as fun, because a game is fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea of it, is that, I mean, hopefully you relate to a game as being fun, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun for you. Yeah. I think people end up making it very serious, if a game is winning an audition, they don't do the audition just for the enjoyment of playing. They don't play the game of winning an audition just to play the game. They play it to win.
Right.
In a lot of time, in a lot of cases. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. It's always fun to win a game. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying that, I think people sort of, it becomes something else, which we can talk about today if you want.
Yeah, because playing it just for playing it, doesn't that feel energetically different from saying I'm playing to win? Not that winning is wouldn't be what you want. Of course you want to win, but like playing for playing, you can mm-hmm. see how you could probably win with that attitude and it would be less of a struggle. Like that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you could really, how I think about it is whenever you have a game, there's always some result you want. I mean, that's the purpose of playing a game is if you think about it, is there some result you want? The problem is when you have an attachment to that result. Then you're like, oh, I want to win. But then it's like, oh, but I'm playing so that I don't want to lose something, or I'm afraid to, it's that sort of thing. That's when you get That's when it gets all messy. That's when a game, it's not fun anymore.
Yep. And the attachment to it, to the outcome, messes up your process.
So being able to play a game just to play it is about no attachment to the outcome. So I'm auditioning. Obviously my aim is to win it, but I'm playing the game just to play the game, and I'm not attached to whether or not I win. I'm just playing to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, if you're playing to win, that's a different kind of game for you.
Right.
If you're playing, so that's the thing is I think people do this with goals. They go, oh, I have a goal to, I don't know, it could be win an audition. It could be anything, but they do this with goals, but goals all of a sudden become, you get really attached to them. You start to get weird about it. You start to become, it morphs into something. That's what's interesting about a game is how you end up morphing it into something it was never meant to be in many cases.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what it is.
And then usually what happens is you start to go down, like other stuff gets mixed into that. So,
there's like a game, like a little game rabbit hole almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And you start to doubt whether or not you're qualified, or you start to,
or you find out someone else is auditioning that you think is better than you. And all of a sudden you start to swirl about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you get to this point where you're so worried about whether or not you win or lose that it's like, it's not even, you couldn't even consider it a game anymore, because it's not even, a game is supposed to be fun, and that's not fun to go that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by all these attachments and things that people have. It's like the game as you began it. If you think about all the games you've ever played, and, it could be, you could just call a game, like we do these challenges. We do 30-day challenges. And really, and honestly, I would say at this point, that we're doing our second 30-day challenge right now. I really feel like we're at a point where we are playing to play versus playing. I mean, it's always nice to win, but I feel like right now we're playing to play, and I actually really enjoy that about it.
I feel the same way. Yeah. I'm more open to seeing, once I put myself in this uncomfortable spot, I'm more open to seeing what evolves from it instead of being attached to doing the game right.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I remember when I first brought up games to you, and you were like, but how do I do that? And you were, really concerned that you were doing it right. Really concerned that you played it a certain way or whatever,
Yes, exactly. What if I don't play it right and then I lose?
Yeah. And in fact, you didn't want to play the game initially because you were afraid to lose, or you were afraid it was going to be too big or something like that, right?
Yes.
Something along those lines, right?
Oh, yeah. I was really afraid to start the first game.
Yep. I remember that. And that was the 100 days, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think part of it was that 100 days seems so long.
Oh, yeah. It was. It was.
Yeah.
It was very long.
Yeah. And I was putting myself on the line to really do more of some stuff that I wasn't doing very much of at all, like social media videos and stuff.
Yep.
And it was way out of my comfort zone.
Yep.
Yep. Which is what a challenge is.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think that's what's fun about games, but anyway, I just think, so that's sort of what games are about. If you want to just to remind people, it's really, you set the parameters for the game, it's this long, this is the target, this is why I'm doing it. You decide what a game is, what it looks like, what the target is, all that sort of thing. You decide.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so as I go, I think where you were with games when we first started, you were like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And so you were on a different level than I was for games to start out with.
Yeah. Mostly because I've done them before. Yeah.
Right.
So
I was just scared. I'd never thought of it in that way. And that showed me a lot about where I was when I was auditioning.
Oh yeah, for sure. Bernie sees a squirrel outside.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Maybe he sees Chubby.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
So that's what a game is, though. It's just, you design it. It's not, it's nothing really more than that, but it's really, what you have to look at is what is your attachment to the outcome, because a game is best played when you're willing to let go of the outcome.
Exactly.
If you're just willing to let it go and just play the game, that's the best way to play a game. If you can play it that way, it's the best way to play it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, totally. Totally. So, yeah, as we were talking about this and we were talking about games, we started to talk about, rules.
Yeah.
And
there's a way that musicians play this game called classical music, I think.
Yeah.
Career, like a classical music career. There's a way that they play it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And so that's what we got into this discussion, actually. That's how we ended up on talking about this today.
Yeah. So this was the discussion we got into. We were saying how there are so many rules that the classical musicians, including myself for the longest time, lived by as if they were like 100% truths, Yep. Like you have to go to college right after high school. You have to go to grad school right after college. You have to study with a certain type of person. You have to, all these things that are kind of lined up, and they're just never really questioned at all.
Yeah, I mean they live as truths. They live as rules that you have to follow. Mm-hmm. They live as rules that you have to follow.
Yeah. And so that ties in really with creating your own career, because we were seeing that like
you were having a conversation with someone who told you, remember how this came up?
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with somebody who was saying to me that there's a lot of entrepreneurship kind of programs being started up in colleges, and
in the music department.
In the music departments, yeah. And not all the schools, but they're in the music departments of colleges. And so I'm curious, because when I look back on where I was as a student in Indiana, I thought, well, gee, if that was happening right now, what would I think of it? And I would probably have, at the place I was, following the rules and really thinking that this was my truth and it had to be this way or no way, I'm going to get a job in an orchestra. And so that still exists in a really big way, I think, for a lot of people. And what she said to me was that people think that creating your own career is like a fallback plan, is like a thing that you do if you fail at getting a job in an orchestra, which I found really interesting. And
yeah, that surprised me. That's actually why we ended up talking about this today, because that really surprised me. I did not know musicians thought that.
It wouldn't have occurred to you to think that. And so when I heard that, it sort of, it made me think of like how people used to think of being an entrepreneur or starting your own business at a certain point in history, as you would know since you lived that business world life, that at a certain point, like when you started building businesses, it was still not really a thing people did as much.
No.
But they were just starting to get interested. But like, it's not like the popular buzzword as it is today. Right?
Yeah, doing a startup, doing your own business, being a freelancer, working on your own. That's all very popular now, but when I was coming up, it was not at all.
Right. I'd heard that there was a time where if someone said I'm doing a startup instead of go to college, like this is pre-Facebook and pre these anomalies.
They wouldn't have said startup because the word startup didn't exist, but they would have said, yeah, I'm going to start my own business, because the word startup didn't exist. That's a very recent word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, startup did not exist before. Yeah. That's a very recent word.
Okay. That's interesting. So, yeah. So if someone would have said that,
language.
If someone would have said that, they would, the reaction would have been like, huh? What? Not going to college? And nowadays, if someone says that, it's like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, if you said you were starting your own business, it was assumed that you, either didn't go to college didn't want to go to college, maybe dropped out of college, couldn't get a job, that sort of thing. That's what it was assumed. It was assumed that, yeah, I mean, you were sort of branded. Something was wrong with you.
That's so fascinating since it's so different now, but I feel like the music world is stuck in whenever that was. Whatever years.
That's exactly where the music world is stuck. And we're talking, I mean, really, I've told people the classical music world is about 25 years behind the rest of the world. I mean, you know, it's not bad, but it's just true. The thinking of classical music is 25 to 30 years behind the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because musicians still think, the classical music world still thinks a resume matters. And it doesn't. In the regular world, it does not matter. The classical music world still thinks that, you know, the rules of yore are the rules of today. They still think that. Yeah. Whereas the rules of the rest of the world have been rewritten and have been being rewritten for a long time.
Yeah.
And classical music isn't rewriting the rules. They're still following the old rules. That's why I say, I mean, really, classical music is 25 to 30 years behind the rest of the world because this has been going on for a long time in other niches. Seriously.
Yeah. When I saw this, when you showed this to me, I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor. Seriously.
Yep.
And, you know, I think probably a big part of it is just because when the belief system is that your career gets created in the practice room, that's a lot of hours not watching what's going on in the rest of the world.
That's correct. I mean, that couldn't be more true. There's no truer statement than what you just said. When your entire life, all of your skill and everything is built in a practice room, you're not watching what's going on in the rest of the world, basically.
Right. Right.
And so you missed it. You just missed it. You know, we were all doing all this stuff over here. You guys all just missed it. You know,
and so that belief, exactly. So that belief that like creating your own career is the fallback plan is very
hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Hilarious to me.
It's hilarious actually, because, it's so incredibly, narrow-minded and blinders on, not looking around at the world today and seeing what's actually true.
Well, you know what's funny about it though? You know what the worst part about it is? It's fine to get a job, but here's what you don't get. What you're really saying when you say that creating a unique career is a fallback and I'm going to get a job is you're saying instead of making my own rules, I am going to hand my future, my life, my career, where I'm going to live, et cetera, over to someone else. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
Are you really willing to do that? Are you really willing to take a chip off the table and hand it to somebody and say, this is my life. Go do what you want. Go play whatever you want to play with it. Are you going to give all your chips?
Right.
To other people actually, to play for you in Vegas? You're going to do that? That doesn't make sense.
I know. And I want to be clear that this doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you get a job in an orchestra. That's not the point.
Yeah,
the point is
you can do that. We're showing you something here. It's important for you to see.
It's very important. Yeah. I want to, before I say the next thing I want to say about people that are in orchestra jobs right now and what's happening over there, if you haven't looked yet, the thing I want to say about this is you have to be careful about saying essentially what you just said, that you're handing over all your playing cards, all your chips to somebody else, because that kind of mental place that you're at in your career decision by making those kind of statements opens yourself up and leaves you open for being impressed in other ways that you wouldn't want to be. Impressed might not be the right word, but let me give you an example. So
yeah, I was going to say, what's your impressed? Yeah.
Yeah. My point is that like when I went to Indiana, I was just really like all about, I want to get a job in an orchestra, but I still had a lot of doubts about whether or not that was capable of that. You know, I still knew I wasn't ready. I felt like that timeline was far and long for me between where I was now and getting that job. And then because I was in that place, in that attitude of this is going to be decided for me by the gatekeepers, the people on committees, the people who are going to decide
because that's who decides. That's who decides.
Yep. Because of that general attitude, I was open to too much. I was too open, like in a dangerous way, meaning like I was so open to being like suggestible, I guess is the point. Like when I had this teacher who was too rough and too mean. I mean, in a way that wasn't about my playing, but taking me down as a person. Mm-hmm. I wasn't standing in a place where I could be a creator. I could be the creator of what I was going to make in my life. Mm-hmm. You know, so like I'm just saying that general attitude about I'm only going to get a job can be too, I feel like I'm not explaining this right, but like it makes you too available for other people's opinions and other people's could be damaging effects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's possible. And I think there is a measure of control. Like, let's say you want to get a job. There is a measure of control that you have. How much you practice, how prepared you are, what music you know or don't know, how well prepared or how much of the repertoire you know of your instrument. We're mm-hmm. talking performance here, right? Performance majors, mm-hmm. right? So, your ability to play, obviously any challenges you have in your playing, physical or otherwise, mental, those things are in your control. What I'm saying is, and don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is all those things are in your control. What's not in your control, if you're saying that a unique career path in classical music is the fallback, what you're saying is I am in control of all these things, but where I get a job, what my job is, where I live, all the things that classical musicians can't decide who decide to audition. What you're saying, you're handing that control over to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of competition for whatever position you want to get, and you are at the mercy of whatever decision they make. That's what I'm saying. And I think I'm going to tell you that is a gamble. I was I was sitting in Vegas at age 26 with my chips going, what am I going to do? And I cashed them in. I was like, I'm done. Because I was not willing to have that life decided for me. I was unwilling. I was never going to be the person who was going to move to another city because there was an orchestra there or whatever. No one was going to tell me where to live. No one was going to tell me if I was good enough. No one was going to tell me any of that. So I cashed in my chips. And by the way, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's what you're getting when you decide that you are going to get a job. That's what you're saying.
Right. And so like this is what you're describing is a time where the rule of classical musicians were you're going to get a job in an orchestra or you're going to get a job teaching somewhere.
You're going to get a job in a military band.
Or military band.
Unless you're a string player, of course. But, woodwinds, brass, percussion, you can get a job in a military band. You can get a job as a university professor. You can, certainly you can teach privately. You're not going to make you're not going to make a big income doing that. I did that, but you're not going to make a big income doing it. You can play in an orchestra. And that was really it.
Yeah. And so that was at a time. Those were the rules.
Those were the rules.
Yep. And there was no internet and that's the way people were living. So now we are in a different place where there is internet and there's a whole world that has been opened up. So if you still keep living as if there isn't, and it's 1995.
That's what's so funny about it is everybody in classical music really, mostly, I'm speaking of the majority here, are living like it's still 1995. It's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's easier to create your own career. I don't know if you get that. It's actually easier to create your own career now than it's ever been.
Yeah. And on top of it, a lot of musicians, it's happening a lot and it's going to, I swear, I'm predicting it now over the next 10, 15 years, a majority of musicians in orchestras will be seeking out ways to create their own career in addition to their jobs in an orchestra.
Well, and so this is sort of the hierarchy. We kind of figured this out. The hierarchy is if you're a musician who wants a job, you think creating your own career and like a unique career in classical music is a fallback. If you are a classical musician who's decided to pursue a unique career, that's all you're thinking. That's all you're thinking about. I just want to create something unique. I just want to do something fun. I want to do something I enjoy. I want to make money doing something I really enjoy doing. Right. So it's funny that the classical musicians who wanted to get jobs are sort of making the unique career folks wrong on some level. Like, wow, that's the fallback plan,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet what's so interesting, which I know you know, Tracy, that there are many, many musicians who have full-time orchestra jobs that totally want the unique career path.
Yeah. Either in addition,
they had it. Yeah, either in addition or as a full-time gig. Yep.
Or as a way to transition out of their jobs,
That's
because
right.
people go, wait a second. Okay. I'm glad I have an orchestra job now. I know I'm lucky. This is generalization. I'm not talking about any one person. People generally know they're lucky that, on some level, they had skills and they made it happen and they won the job, and it was because they deserved it. But there's another level of luck. Like on the day that you won that job, you beat out a bunch of people and everything else, and now you have the job. But then you go, okay, am I going to do this until I'm 80 or 75?
Yeah. There comes a point where the job becomes stifling. This is it's life.
Yes. And most people don't these days, regardless of if you're a musician or not, most people recognize, I don't think I want to do the same thing for 40 years anymore.
That's what our grandparents and in some cases, our parents did. That's back when they had pensions and stuff like that. They don't have those things anymore. But I mean, it was it was normal for someone to go work a job for 40 or 50 years. That doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, I don't think any one of us could imagine doing something for 40 or 50 years. No. I couldn't. I couldn't even imagine it.
I know. So that, I mean, it brings us back to the game thing a little bit because, and we'll totally come back to what we're talking about now, but I think this is the right time to bring up the game again because as I know for me, when I was auditioning, that game was about winning an audition, and I didn't really think very much about what happens after the win. If I were to win,
you just figured you were done.
Yeah. Now I'm set because I have a salary.
Yep.
And
that was
that
goal.
Is like the recipe for disaster because the rest of it's your life. Yeah. And so Eileen was saying you need to create a new game, and so the game we all as musicians, everybody focuses on the game of winning the audition. And then there's never any talk about the game that you create for your life, career, job. What happens when you win the job?
What comes after you win? Yeah. It's called, we could call it, like before Christ, after Christ, before the win, after the win.
Yeah.
Really?
AW.
Yeah. After the win. Nobody really thinks about it, but that's the conversation that never really gets had. And that's why you end up with super disgruntled people in orchestras. That's how you end up with the curmudgeon, players in the orchestra.
Yeah.
They stopped playing games. They probably didn't play a game after they won their job. That was it. And then they became, they arrived. And then, over time it got old and then they became a curmudgeon. That's what happened.
Yeah. Another thing that can happen is no tenure. Like if you don't create your new game, that's usually a lower percentage of people that happens to. But usually there's some level of job dissatisfaction because the new game wasn't created. Yep. And that's taking you're not giving, you're giving away all of your power by saying, now I'm in this place, a place that you don't know the rules that exist inside. It's like you've been at the gate and you're auditioning outside the gate, right? And then they open the gate and they let you in. You don't know the rules that are on the inside. You get to find out that information later once you get the job. And if you don't create a game for yourself, you're just at the mercy of whatever rules are inside of, or on the inside, you know?
Look, I've talked to people who are, in our audience who've been in orchestras for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they're miserable. They're miserable.
Yeah.
They're miserable. Now, are there classical musicians who are thrilled with their job still? Sure. Of course there are. But they're the minority. I promise you. They're in the minority. There's not that many of them. I think it's funny that this thing called getting a job, everyone's like, oh, so amazing. Get a job. And if they actually talk to symphony musicians, they would get a whole nother view.
I know.
They would get a whole nother view of what it's like to be in an orchestra. It's like being on a playground. There's the mean kids and there's the dorks, and there's the Crips and the Bloods and that's what it is. I mean, like it's a playground. Yeah. That's what it is, because when you go on a playground, there's all those different kinds of kids on a playground. Yeah. What do you think you're going to find in an orchestra? It's the same thing.
Right.
There's the
exactly.
bullies, there's the bullies.
Yeah.
There's there's the people who think they're right about everything. There's the smarter than everybody, there's the nitpickers. They nitpick. The way everything is done, right? I mean, you were in an orchestra,
Oh yeah, that's accurately describing. Yeah. Like you're saying these names, and I'm thinking of actual people.
I know
as you
do
are.
It. I'm sure. I hope there are people. I hope there's people running through your mind right now.
Oh, totally.
For anyone who's listening, I hope
I'll list them in the show notes. No, just kidding.
Exactly. I'll list them in the show notes. Yeah, but I mean, seriously, but I just think it's funny though. This whole thing about getting a job as a game, and look, there's nothing wrong with the game called Getting a Job. It's fine. But you're thinking of it. You're thinking about it. We're trying to change your thinking about it a little bit.
Right. Because there's another thing.
It's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is.
And it's not exactly. It's not. And you want to have a palette of things to choose from in your life.
Totally.
So that
totally. That's really why to have a unique career, because you can be in an orchestra and you can do many other things.
Oh, so totally. And then the idea of creating a new game once you're inside the gate. The reason is because when you're a newbie, I can tell you this from my experience in the North Carolina Symphony. And granted, it wasn't, I auditioned and the runner-up whole thing, yada, yada. But I still had the same kind of experience as if, first day I'm new.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a regular member or, whether you're anointed in the program or not. Yeah. You're still, you still played with them for what, 10 seasons?
Yeah.
12 seasons, whatever it was.
Something like that. Yeah. So I remember the early seasons and I'm like, wow, this place is so great. The conductor is so easy to follow and awesome. And I love him. And he's so charismatic. And we get to see these guest conductors and we get this and we get that. And wow,
and I get to play my horn every day.
And I get paid
for it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yep. And then over time,
it's
you're
all
on the road.
Shiny. It's like a shiny new penny.
Yeah, it is.
It's like,
and then over time.
It's like when the puppies, comes in your house and you love the puppy and then it starts to piss on your floor. And you're like, wait! What happened to all the cuteness? But seriously.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Because over time, you're doing the nitty gritty stuff and then maybe, you see the same guest conductor 7 times and you're like, oh, his shtick is the same every time. Or, there's just examples of things you could pull out of a hat of people's complaints.
I have to play the Harry Potter, saga for the 4th time or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? The Star Wars theme song again.
Yeah. The Star Wars again. Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of stuff. That's when it starts to grate on you. That's when that if you don't have a game, that's going to take you right down the rabbit hole, right down that game rabbit hole we were talking about.
Yeah. So I have a question. Can you think of a game that let's pretend you're a musician who just won an audition. What kind of game would you set up for yourself now that you've just won? Now your winning is off the table. Cause I think what happens a lot of times is people do the orchestra job now that they've won. And then over time things start to feel meh. And then they go, okay, the only game I know how to play is auditioning. So I'm going to start looking in the paper and finding more auditions to take. That's really what people do.
Well, I think I would look at, first of all, other ways to bring in income, because I like the game of bringing income in. So, I think I would, and it would depend on my interests. So maybe, teaching was something I enjoyed doing, but I wanted to teach at a higher level. So maybe the next game would be, I'd want to get a part-time work teaching, something, maybe lessons or being a professor at a school. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I would, if I really enjoyed playing in an orchestra, I would seek out to sub at other orchestras besides the one I play in, depending on which one I play in. Or maybe another game would be, I'd have a chamber group or something on the outside that did gigs outside of my, right? If I'm a player. So there's any number of things. I think it depends on your interests, but, or maybe if there was something if I really enjoyed traveling, I might do something with that. Or if I really enjoyed, cooking, I would do something with that. If I had an interest outside of music, that would be the time I would definitely explore it.
Right. Now that you have an income problem solved on some level.
Yeah, because that's really what an orchestra job is. Essentially, besides you play your instrument for a living, you also have an income problem essentially solved for yourself. Like you can pay your bills. Yeah, partly or wholly. So if that income problem is solved, then I can explore other things outside of music that I would be interested in. And that's what I think I would do.
Yeah.
In fact, I would pursue non-music things outside versus music things if I had that income problem solved as a musician.
Uh-huh.
That's what I would do personally. So I think it depends on the person,
Right. Like you would want to have that outlet of non-musical thing or whatever.
Yes.
And I can think of what about people who are not necessarily first chair, but they're not the concert master or they're not principal, but they really like soloing, or they really like, they could consider trying to be a soloist on like a small level, on a small circuit, like, those per service community orchestras.
Totally.
And create that for themselves. Or
Exactly. I mean, look, if you treat your job like a job and then you don't do anything on the outside, that job eventually is going to become the death of you. And that's what's happened to a lot of orchestral players.
Yeah.
Whether they admit it publicly or not, by the way, these are conversations that they typically only have when they are in what they feel like is trusted company.
Mm-hmm.
They're not saying this publicly.
Oh, no.
They're not saying publicly that they're unhappy or that they wish they had pursued anything else or that they'd love to quit, but they don't have anything else. Or they're not saying that out loud. They're saying it quietly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've talked to them, but they're not saying.
I have too.
Yeah, I know you have. And, they're not saying that out loud. So I just think that's why I think it's so interesting that there's this thing that you were talking about, this woman who you spoke with about, a unique career as a backup plan. I don't see how it can possibly, in 1995, I get it was a backup plan. In 2017, it's a forefront plan in my mind. Because it's actually possible. It's possible in a way that it was never possible. Mm-hmm. Back in 1995.
Yeah.
It just,
And I'm telling you, the more that people start to see this, especially people in orchestra, especially people in bigger orchestras too, because they have their credibility, which we could talk about in a minute. Because we were talking about that too, like in a really big way.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that.
But
because that's what always wrecks the unique career too. So we'll definitely talk about that. That thing right there wrecks the unique career.
Yeah, it does, because I can tell you that the people who are in bigger orchestras who are going to start creating unique careers in addition to their positions are people that you're going to see as people who already have credibility. Mm-hmm. Because they have those jobs. And so you're going to say, oh, well, that person can create that because they're the principal of such and such orchestra. They're the blah, blah, blah. They have that title. They have that. They're in that orchestra. They're credible to go out and be a public figure and speak about something that they think is important. that's a credibility that I don't have because I'm not in that orchestra. So therefore I can't create something.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be some reason. It could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
So we were talking about that because, way back, like way over a year ago, because that was the first thing I thought was if I'm going to create a unique career, which I decided was going to be something about creating a unique career, talking about creating a unique career. But actually it was before that, I just wanted to write. I thought that writing was a way that I could create credibility since essentially I felt like I was a nobody. I mean, let's be clear, I was, I had a certain freelance career and I never had gotten a job in a big orchestra. And so now I want to create something else. And who am I? And so I thought I had to be somebody in order to do that. So,
that's interesting. What I think is interesting though, just that point of view, I'm a nobody.
Uh-huh.
You mean you're a nobody to other people? Like they don't know your name?
I think that's where I was at that time. Like a nobody, in the scene, like I'm not first horn of the Chicago Symphony, for example.
I see.
Like that's,
I see.
What I mean?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So a nobody for you is defined as I don't have something I can point to say title. That I'm important. Okay.
Title.
I don't have a title. Okay.
And for me, and when I finally had a look at where I was coming from the whole time, what was starting to really bother me about my career at a certain point when I realized where I was and, here I am and I have several choices and I don't know what's next for me, like the dark ages, like 2 or 3 years back.
Yeah.
That was the thing that bothered me really the most. I didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, what I need to do is I need to go and audition and get a title so I can show them that I'm credible.
And it's really, and the them is your own community, is it not?
Yes, it is.
The horn community. Yep.
The horn community, the music community, the people that have said to me, you're not a real member of this orchestra. You're just a sub. People say that. People say that out loud. So what is it?
It's so funny. It's really funny because musicians are always peacocking for each other. You notice that?
Yeah,
it's
and musicians do it to each other.
Yeah, that's what musicians do if you think about it. The whole music community, the classical music community anyway, is all about peacocking for each other. That's all it is. Who looks better in the mirror? That's what it is.
Absolutely. And so here I was thinking that I needed this credibility, this title. But it was really for the colleagues, because every time that I would go and talk to audience members after a concert, they don't know that I'm a sub.
Nope.
Regardless if it's the Chicago Symphony, the North Carolina Symphony, wherever I was playing, people would talk to me after the concert and go, that was a great concert. They see I have a horn on my back. That was fantastic. I really loved the horns on that concert. Are they going, wait a second, are you real?
You know what's really funny? You're reminding me. When I went, the first tour I went on with Chicago Youth Symphony I was not an official member yet. I was actually a sub. And while we were there, we were in, Hungary, I believe. And there was a TV station that was interviewing orchestra members. And they stopped me to interview me, and I laughed. I mean, like, I was laughing inside because I wasn't even a full member of the orchestra. I was a sub. I was a sub. There was somebody who wasn't going to go on the tour. And so I went on the tour and I got interviewed. And I remember there were all kinds of whisperings about, she's not even a regular member and she got interviewed on TV and blah, blah, blah. Hungarian TV, right? But I mean, and I remember sort of chuckling at that, thinking that was funny that I got interviewed even though I was a sub. They didn't know that I wasn't a regular member. They don't know.
Yeah. And they don't care, but the musicians were the ones who had a problem with it.
Yeah, totally. They absolutely had a problem with it. Yeah. Not that I cared. I really actually didn't care, but.
Of course you didn't, which is really awesome.
Yeah. No, I didn't care at all. But I think it's funny though. I think it's funny that that's what all the, the credibility is not actually for anybody but your own community.
Yep.
Because the rest of the world thinks you're great. You play horn? What? You're like a two-headed or two-horned unicorn.
Yeah.
You play an instrument for a living? You're automatically a unicorn. Automatically.
Right. Right. Yeah. And then they start telling you, oh, I've been I've been a subscriber to this orchestra for 50 years and we really love it. Like they talk to you like you've been there the whole time, probably.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Well, and I mean, so you ended up, are you speaking of too when you started Crushing Class, or sorry, it was Hornwise at that time, but are you talking about when you started Hornwise, that this is when, you started to have the credibility grappling thing?
Right when I started Hornwise, and then right when I changed it to Crushing Classical, that was when I started to grapple with that identity, credibility.
I'm nobody.
I'm nobody.
Yeah. Yep.
And so here was the problem, and I described this to you, and you were laughing because you're like, totally. It's funny. I was like, I don't have credibility, so I need to write a book, because when people write books, they have credibility then. But in order to write a book that people want to read, you have to be credible.
Yeah. And so we actually gave this a name because, so it's, say it again. So it's, I need credibility, right? I don't have credibility.
I need credibility and I don't have it.
I don't have it. And then the next part of it is what?
So I in order to get credibility, I'm going to write a book, because
I'm going to write a book.
Yeah. So people that are credible have books.
Yeah. People that are credible have books automatically. But then there's the other side of it, which is,
I need credibility to write a book.
That's right. And it just goes around and around. We call it the permission triangle.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a permission triangle. So you think, at the top of the triangle is always, I don't have credibility. And by the way, I hear this out of every person's mouth. No exception. Mm-hmm. There's not a classical musician alive that I've talked to so far, or even that I've heard people on other podcasts, that think they have credibility. The number one, and everyone's looking for permission. Everyone's looking, and they think permission is granted via credibility.
Yeah, I know.
This is the whole thing. Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, the interesting thing is, as I'm doing interviews with people, as I'm doing even pre-interviews with people before podcasts, I had this revelation this week. I said, oh my God, every person can be a public figure.
Yep.
Every single person.
Every single person can be a public figure. You're right.
Because they all have something unique. They all have something that they all have experiences that have created opinions and something that they stand for and a way of living that they have.
Yep. Everybody's got, you put me in front of anybody. You're so right, Tracy. You put me in front of anybody and I talk to you for 10 minutes and I will tell you what you can be a public figure about. Mm-hmm. I mean, even I had a housemate in Denver who worked at the jail. She worked at the Jefferson County Jail and had been there for many, many years. But I'll tell you, and she would tell you she never knew what her purpose was in life. Never knew it. And she would shout that from the rooftops. She said, I never thought I had a purpose. She had a couple of kids, but she said, I never knew what my purpose was for myself. So I just had this job, and it was an admin job. But what she never got, this is what's so interesting about her. You know what she could be a public figure about? This woman really truly understands how to spend and save money. She's very frugal, but she's smart about money. Very good at saving, very good at spending, very good, very smart in her decision making about money in general. Like her whole life. She completely managed her finances to, incredible tea her whole life, because we had several conversations about it. She could totally be a public figure about that. Totally.
Wow.
Even though she's an admin at a jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
it's like my aunt. Remember my aunt?
Oh, your aunt. Brilliant.
Yeah.
She would be so brilliant.
Yeah.
We came up with the most awesome brand for her too. We totally did.
I know. We did. So my aunt, it was so fun to do that. We had, and it's really fun to do this together with you. And I'm getting good at it because of being around you and because of this whole process. So my aunt was a school teacher. She retired. She's a school teacher and worked in the education system for a long time. Really good at what she does. At the end of her career, she was a principal of a school, but she's always been super, chic. She's got great clothes. She knows how to shop. She knows how to put outfits together with bags and shoes and everything, to the T.
Wow.
She's really, lifestyle too. Like she knows how to decorate. Like it just comes naturally to her. She waves a magic wand and her house looks amazing. Like, and she does it all herself, you know, up to the things she hangs on the walls, the choices of, she's ordering stuff online and it comes in a box and she throws it in, you know, like, how do you do that? You know? And it's like it's a lifestyle.
Yeah. Plus, and let me tell you, I wouldn't have the first clue about any of that, but she's amazing at it. You know?
Right. And she can make like 7,000 different kinds of fruity, cool tasting martinis. Right. And she looks like, she looks like a supermodel while she's doing it. Yeah. But yet she doesn't, you know, she does. So we created that and we're like, I told her, you do this. You got to do this. Yeah. You can go online and start being she's like, I don't know.
Easily, she's very magnetic as well. She just has a magnetic way about her. I mean, I don't even know her and I can feel her magnetism in her posts. Really.
Oh, she's absolutely.
Very incredibly magnetic. And she could totally be a public figure. I mean, absolutely. I'm telling you, I could talk to anybody 10, 15 minutes max. 15 minutes. And I can tell anybody.
I talked to a really young musician the other day. And he's going to be on the podcast. And I talked to him for a while and I realized who he was, you know, a young musician who's open to experimenting with his career and being patient enough to wait to see what comes down the pike for him and then trying it and seeing how that affects how he can do that and what that learning does for his other playing experiences. So he's getting into teaching and being really open about the teaching, not like he's telling me stories and these opportunities he had after grad school to teach in a classroom. And here I am going, if someone told me that for a semester I had to teach 6th grade band, I would probably jump off a cliff. But here he is doing that job and going and having these realizations about how, for him being in front of people, is integral for the happiness and fulfillment of his performance career.
Wow.
Realizing that he can, as he creates his, ensemble, which he did, at the end of his grad school stuff, that he, you know, as much as he likes playing an orchestra and he doesn't rule it out as a possibility of something he would do, he wants to have performance opportunities where he can interact with the audience because he gets an immense amount of fulfillment from that. And he got that from teaching. Like, so he was open enough to like look there to get that information. And I was like, that's unique. You know, no, people don't usually do that.
Yeah. Well, people just aren't usually open to exploring what they would want to do. You know, so many people graduate or they're on a track where they're thinking they're all about the have tos and not the want tos.
Right. Exactly.
You know? That's where so many people are there. And it's really sad because the opportunities are endless to do what you want instead of do what you have to.
Right. And if you know, without a shadow of a doubt that you want to be in an orchestra, you probably most 100% definitely have some aspect to you that would create you as a public figure in some way, shape, or form. And you don't need credibility for it. So I'm just saying,
you're right.
Not necessary. It's, you can do it even if you do want that job. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right. And the other thing I was going to say is, you know what I think, you and I haven't talked about this before, but you know what I think has kind of ruined, I don't think it's kind of, I think it has. I think what's ruined people is the chase for the almighty dollar. I know you have to pay your bills. I know you have to, but there's such a, I want to get rich thing that everybody, people tend to, what do I want to say? They think that being able to pay their bills or getting by is not enough. And so I think that's when they start to, go down the have to path. There's you know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's a, how much success am I going to show to the world? Whether it's by money, whether it's by, fame, whether it's by your name is known, a title you get, whatever. There's you know what I'm saying? There's like a holy grail disease. And because this guy you're talking about, I'm sure he's not making bank right now. Can we agree on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing, but he's not making bank. He's living, right?
Uh-huh.
He's got probably an apartment and maybe roommates and who knows, and he's paying, he's got to buy food and whatever, but he's not killing it, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying that chase for fame, money, a title, whatever, I think that's when the have to starts.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that's when instead of the want to, and I'm really hoping that's changing with this generation.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that that's changing.
I think maybe, and I can't speak for every person who's going for a job in an orchestra, but part of that is that, like, knowing, oh, I can have a certain kind of lifestyle if I get in a top 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, but the thing is, you can have that lifestyle not just being in a top 5.
Mm-hmm.
You actually can. Because, it's not, a top 5 orchestra, what is it, 150,000-ish?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's not actually that hard to make 150,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I know that probably sounds crazy for me to say that, but it's really actually not that hard to make that amount of money.
Right.
It's really not. That's actually, that's almost a middle class living nowadays. Anything below 100 is like a lower middle class living just because of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just think it's interesting how, and definitely I know credibility plays into this, but there's such a focus on that, the whole credibility and permission, especially in classical music. There's just a lot of the permission, credibility, peacocking, a lot of that going on. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we're obviously, this conversation is about changing that.
Yep.
We really aim to change that. That's what Crushing Classical is about, is to change that existing conversation. And I know it's going to take, it's like pushing a, Greyhound up Everest.
I know the hardest thing to do is to change a conversation that's existing as truth.
Yep. It exists as a truth right now. It does. I mean, we're very well aware of that. We're very well aware of the, the challenge we've taken on.
Yeah.
Very aware of it. So, yeah. So anyway, there you go. That's really games part 2. It's another level, another way to think about games.
Yep. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I can't think. I think we covered everything I wanted to cover, but I'm eager to continue this conversation in Classical Cats because I know we probably struck some nerves today.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to start that conversation this coming week.
Yeah. I mean, I know these conversations are uncomfortable for some people, and I bet there's some lurkers who are, cursing our names right now, which is fine. I wish you would curse us publicly, though. Why don't you just come in the Classical Cast group and tell us?
Tell us yourselves. But you know what? This is a really great episode to do right before we start the 7-day challenge, actually. Mm-hmm. Because as you're listening and you go, well, you know what? I haven't thought about it too much. Maybe you're in a place where you haven't thought about it too much about what you want to do as your unique career, regardless of where you are and what you're doing. If you're in an orchestra, if you're not, if you're in school, if you're not, whatever. This is the chance to explore what that would look like for you. And it's a great challenge. Let me just say it's really, really great. So all you have to do to join, it's free. And all you have to do to join is go to facebook.com/groups/Crushing Classical Starting Line. I'll put the link in the show notes and you can join right there. So
sounds good.
And it starts November 6th to 12th.
Yep.
And,
7 days. You can do anything for 7 days.
You can do anything for 7 days. And let me just tell you,
for 7 days. That's it.
What you do is you set up your day with the information that we talk about on the Facebook Live, which starts at 10 a.m. Eastern, every day for 7 days. And there's a simple assignment. It's not like you have to go to the library and do research. It's a simple assignment that you just look into your life to see the answers and you share. And I'm telling you, it was so amazing. And I had I can't wait to do it again. honestly.
It's going to be good. Yeah, it'll be great. I think, yeah.
And there's several people who are doing it again.
Yeah, there are a lot of people repeating it. There are a lot of people repeating it. So, yeah, if they're repeating it, it was good. So join us. If you're even remotely interested in exploring what a unique career might look like for you, the 7-day challenge is a great way for you to explore that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And also in a real safe place with other musicians that are
it's a closed group.
Yeah, closed group, same place that you are. Everybody's in the same spot you are. So
I'm really glad you said that, Eileen, because it just reminded me how touched I was actually emotionally several times to just feel like I wasn't alone.
Yep. That's the best part about it is you recognize, that you're not in this by yourself.
Yep.
Totally. Cool.
That's great. All right. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
That was great. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for listening today. Hey, listen, I have a huge favor to ask you, and it will only take a few seconds. If you like this show, one way that you can let us know is by writing a review on iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. Writing a review will help other people to find the podcast and help us immensely. It will only take a few minutes. Just head over to iTunes and search for Crushing Classical. There, you can write a review and click subscribe. Thanks again.